Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into this installment of Return to Base. I am your host, Cliff. Today's guest is somebody who, if you are a veteran, if you are thinking about becoming a veteran, if you are a spouse of a veteran, you just absolutely need to follow her on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on wherever she's putting stuff out. If she has a Reddit, I don't know about it, but you need to go look it up. She's a tremendous resource when it comes to information for transitioning out of the military. She's a fantastic mentor. She's willing to talk to anybody and really go to bat and advocate for veterans. Being a veteran herself, she's been there. She's done that. She knows what drives people to serve. She also knows what drives companies to hire veterans. So she's also the founder and CEO of Military Talent Partners, which is a company. It's a recruitment firm, and that sells it a little bit short. She does so much more than that. So without further ado, thank you for coming to this podcast. Thank you for listening. Hit subscribe if you get a chance on whatever podcast service you're listening to us on, and stay tuned for Natalie. Bravo Zulu, this is Victor Lima. We are RTB. This is Return to Base, a VeteranLife podcast. We are here with Natalie Oliverio from Military Talent Partners. She's a Navy vet. We won't hold that against her, but thank you for joining us.
Hey, Cliff. Thanks so much for having me.
It is a privilege to have you, because ever since that I started transitioning and paying attention to LinkedIn and things like that, your name has kind of been synonymous. You're almost like a little conscience that's sitting on my shoulder, little devil or angel, whichever one that is sitting on my shoulder and giving me nice transition tips since I've been out. So I appreciate that.
Oh, you're so welcome. I would admit that I am most likely to be voted, I want to say 50-50 devil angel, but I feel like it might be 60-40 devil. But really, at the end of the day, I just want you to do what's best for you. So sometimes that means burning bridges and screwing everybody else, figuratively. But it's all about what's best for you. So I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, well, your advice, your wisdom that you put out on social media, on LinkedIn and stuff is obviously very needed, but it goes much further than that for you. Obviously you're associated with some other groups that I'm also associated with, like Elite Meat, and we'll get to all that. So let's just slow down a little bit and let's talk about your life, Natalie. We want to know about you and kind of what brought you to where you are right now. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Cool. So again, you were in the Navy. What brought you to do that? You're in West Virginia, right?
I'm in West Virginia. I'm from West Virginia, born and raised.
Right. And I know they have a pretty good Navy there.
No Navy here.
No Navy.
The other Virginia has in Norfolk, they have the largest Navy base in the world. But, I didn't have an ambition to go into the military. But I did have the ambition to go to college, but that ambition turned into just having a whole lot of fun instead. Right. And long story short, it just wasn't the right move for me. And it kind of was my first taste of a failure.
College.
I withdrew. I wasn't going to class. I went to WVU. I was having a really good time.
Isn't that a party school?
Yeah. So it wasn't really for me because I just wasn't doing very well. And I needed to redesign what my future plan was. And my parents were all over me, and I was the oldest in my family as far as the children. And I had to do something big enough to shut everybody up, and something that would really challenge me, because I was I get bored so easily. And everything I had planned on, my entire high school career just went down the tubes really fast. And I had a younger brother who the recruiters just kept calling and calling and calling. And one of them got me, totally got me on the phone. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Nothing." He's like, "Well, what were you in college for?" And I'm like, "Journalism." He's like, "You could be a journalist in the Navy." And I'm like, "Really? Wait, so I could travel the world?" They made it sound like a 5-star resort, first of all. You sure you know how the rest of it went? So I go into the Navy, big goals, big dreams, all these things. Didn't get right in as a journalist, ended up being a dental tech, then became undesignated, and moved on to all kinds of other stuff. But then 8 months in, it was 9/11.
Oh.
And everything changed, like it did for everybody who was around on 9/11. And everything changed. It was scary. It was different. And it just completely redesigned my future from that point on. And
Where were you?
I was actually, it was September 10th, 2001 was my first day underway off the coast of the Atlantic of Virginia. We were doing workups for deployment.
Wow.
And so on the morning of 9/11, we raced up to Yorktown to onboard Tomahawk missiles as I was on a guided missile destroyer. And then we went right up off the coast of New York for just to stand watch.
Oh.
Because no one knew what was going to happen later that day or the next day or the next day. And so I remember we were in we had duty. You had to stay in 24-hour watch for duty it was like once every 10. We had a 10-day duty section, which meant once every 10 days you were on duty for 24 hours. Right. And we went down to 3 days. That's how much they upped the number of watches and the security points. And so it just completely changed for the entire world, definitely the entire country and everyone serving in the military. And so it really shaped the rest of my service. And, I had ended up meeting my husband while I was serving. Otherwise, I probably would have stayed in longer. But all I wanted to do was correct my previous failure of leaving college with 2 beers in my hand instead of a degree. So I did that and then I got married and then I began a career in HR because it was people and helping people tell their story or helping connect people to something bigger than themselves that really excited me. And the thing is, when I got out of the Navy, when I thought I knew what I was doing, I actually didn't. Right. It was so weird.
What year was that?
It was 2005. Mm-hmm. And I was going back to West Virginia. So when you're transitioning from the military and you go back to your hometown or your home state, you get this sense of a little bit of ego, a little bit of comfort, and that you got this. You've been here before, you've done these things, it'll be fun.
Right. You're a world traveler, unlike all these hicks in West Virginia.
Badass now. Who's not going to want to work with you? Except for going through something so dynamic as a military service and living in a military lifestyle for however many years, it changes you. Right. You're different. You're not the same person you were before on purpose. They purposely change you, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody else around you has changed too. And the way they act around you is different. The way they talk to you is different. The way you're thought about is different. And for me, when I look to my peers and my friends and family, they had all kept going with their lives. It was like I was in a time capsule away in the military, and they had just kept going on with their lives. My friends had professional jobs. They already had their degrees. My family had no clue. I can't even tell you, in a small town, people said, "Oh, are you back now?" I'm like, yeah, I've been back for a minute. It's a long time. "Oh, weren't you in the military? Are you back now?" People, they just don't get it.
Right.
But that they don't get it spread is so much bigger in your transition. Yeah. And it makes you feel like you don't belong. It makes you feel out of place, and you have no idea what your next mission is or your next purpose or how the hell you're going to get there. And so that never, and it still today has not left me. I will never forget the way that felt. I think for anyone that you talk to that's gone through it, mm-hmm. even anyone who's been displaced in their career. Maybe they were fired or laid off or riffed or whatever the case, and they're out of work and you don't have a place to go in the morning when you wake up. That's that same feeling of you don't have a place to belong. You don't know what your purpose is. You don't know what your plan is. And for a lot of veterans, especially high performing veterans, that can feel unraveling.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. I spoke with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk a while back, and he mentioned that was one of the causes, if you will, of unresolved trauma is this loss of identity, right? And it certainly isn't what caused the trauma, but it doesn't help when you also lose your identity. So you going back to West Virginia, you thought you were going to be this same old Natalie, but with world travel, with a degree of optimism and confidence. And it turned out that nobody knew who you were now, right?
Exactly. It was like I never had been here before. Nice. And I was so uncomfortable in my own skin.
Wow.
Walking around a place that I should have owned. Right?
Did you think about moving anywhere else?
I didn't, because my whole family was there. My husband's whole family was there. And it's like, when I was living in Hampton Roads, Virginia, I remember thinking to myself, you know what, like most places are the same to some degree. What really makes the difference, what really matters is who you're with. And so for a long time, I felt that way. And I still do now, although I think being a business owner and traveling so much, I'm more open to different experiences and to living elsewhere. But because I felt so out of place, I couldn't even think that far.
Right.
As like moving somewhere else, because I knew moving to a new place, I'd feel just the same, like a stranger, like somebody who's never been here before. And it stung a little bit more because it was my home, but those feelings had to be resolved or they would follow me forever. And, you know, years later, I was in a role that was eliminated due to a company crisis, and my entire team was broken up and let go. And that was a kind of job I thought I would be at forever. And I felt exactly like I did years before, post-Navy, but lost. I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't know what my purpose was. And outside of that, I had a very good life, loving spouse, amazing little baby, great friends, support system. It didn't matter because I didn't know what I was doing the next day or the day after that, next week, next month. I got to a really dark place, just like post-transition. And it was very, very hard to get out of. But once I did, I bounced back really hard. And I remembered that what brought me out of this transition rabbit hole was sitting down with myself and just figuring out what the hell I wanted to do. Because no matter how badly I wanted someone to give me the answers or help me out of it, nobody could do that for me. I had to do it for myself. And until I was ready to put in that work and have that difficult conversation for and with myself, there was no getting out of it. And it was the same way years later when I was unemployed and uninspired and unengaged with anything.
So getting out of the military, going back to West Virginia, did you pop right back into school, use your GI Bill? Was that the plan? Is that what happened? And how was it different? How'd you grow in that time you were away? And I mean, did you ever get your degree or did you drop out again?
No, I got my degree. I did get my degree. I drank a lot less. It was, after time in the Navy, drinking just didn't have the same, allure to it.
Right.
I'm sure that you can understand. Versus being, 18. Oh, I remember my first beer. No, me too. I was 18 and I was in college and I wasn't even legal yet, and so on and so forth. But man, I miss that GI Bill money. That was so great. Like, that was amazing. Anybody who doesn't take advantage of their GI Bill needs to seriously rethink that, or gift it to someone who can use it in your family, because it's like free money. It was like free money in my checking account every month. And I had so much left over after tuition. It was like continuing to be paid to learn. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is really cool.
Yeah, how come nobody else is doing this?
Right? Like, this is dope. And, there were definitely really dark days on active duty when I was like, why didn't I just go to class? This is not for me. I can't do this. What was I thinking? Like, I should have just stayed in class, just gone to class, shouldn't have drank so much beer, would have been so much better. But how the Navy changed me is it grew me in ways that I didn't know, or anyone who knew me would know was possible. And I am the woman I am today because of those experiences. I don't know that I could have been challenged as brutally or authentically as I was in the Navy and in the time that I served post 9/11. I don't think that there's any parallel experience that could have given me the balls that I have now, and the self-awareness, the survivability that I have. And I know that no matter what, I am resilient enough to figure it out and to make it happen with little to nothing in my corner. And I've done it. I've done it several times. And I wasn't raised that way. I was raised in a traditional gender, female gender role. I was raised to grow up and get married. I wasn't taught about business or economics or money or things that typical males were raised with, back in the 90s. Or as the young people call it today, they call it the late 1900s.
Do they say that?
They do, which I'm not condoning, but it is kind of. So, everything I did and was doing and wanted to do was always pushing the norm, always pushing what other people said I could or couldn't do. If you say I can't do something, there's nothing to stop me from going just all out to do it, just because you're wrong. Whatever it is, I'll do it, and I'll probably do it better than you.
Right. Because you had an experience in the Navy, I'm sure, where, I'm not going to say everybody, but most of us wrestle sometimes in basic training or whatever with a little bit of self-loathing, a little bit of that doubt monster creeps in. I don't know if I can do this, but then you do.
Kidding. The first 2 weeks, I felt like that. I would be so scared of everything that was to come the next day. And then the next day would come and I would crush it. And then I would be just scared for the next day. And the next day would come and I'd crush it too. It took me a solid 2 weeks before that fear backed up a little bit. But it's like every week that you get through in boot camp, you feel like, oh God, that wasn't the hardest week. The hardest week is definitely coming next week. I don't know if I can do it. And so you hear everybody else having those fears too. And it just feeds that fear monster. Yeah. But then when you get through it and you get through, the various trainings and exercises and things you do throughout your career, you realize, okay,
I got this. I got this.
Yeah, totally.
Now, were your classmates enamored by you? Like, oh, look, this is right just a few years after 9/11, right? So things had to have been a little bit different. Fast forward 10 years later, because you're coming out of the military. Iraq invasion just happened. We'd been in Afghanistan for a time period. People were still pretty proud. Plus, you're from West Virginia. West by God, Virginia, where, there's a good amount of patriotism there where people like, wow, Natalie's a veteran. Let's ask Natalie what she thinks about this. Or was it a mixture of that and the opposite?
I feel like it was more the opposite. So much as every time I set foot inside the VA, people would be like, are you here with your husband?
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about it from that angle.
Right? Like I was at Target one time checking out. Sorry, Target. I love you, but I'm telling this story. And I had a military ID in my wallet and you couldn't see anything except for the top of it. And the person ringing me up saw it as I was getting ready to get my credit card out to pay. And they're like, oh, tell your husband, thank you for his service. And so, I'm not that sensitive about it. I feel like men and women are equal veterans. I don't think any one is better than anybody else. And, but it definitely is a thing that when people outside of the military or with very little or limited exposure to the military community and the diversity that lives within it, when you hear the word veteran, you typically think of a man. And so that was very much West Virginia. They were behind the curve for sure, even though this was like right around the Jessica Lynch era too. You know what I mean? And she was from West Virginia.
West Virginia.
Right, exactly. So it was just like a novelty almost, because it was so not the norm. And so it really was just another layer of why people were uncomfortable talking to me, or like how to approach me, or what to say to me, or what not to say to me. And it just made me more of an outsider than anything else.
Interesting.
And, WVU at the time didn't even have a veterans organization. And I was one of the first people to help start that up at WVU. And there was like no enclave or like support system for veterans. And I'm like, this is a major university. What is happening? But, a lot has happened since then, thankfully. But people don't realize how diverse the military is. There are over 3,000 jobs in our military. Mm-hmm. It runs like its own massive global organization, because it is.
Yes, it is.
People from all backgrounds. People say, about special operators, oh, they're all white males. Yeah, there are a lot fewer minority males and even fewer females, but you can't say that all special forces are just white males with great hair if you're a SEAL.
Hey, wait a minute. I got
that. Just kidding. But, there's just so many stereotypes that live within and outside of the military, that there's such a barrier to real understanding that creates multiple streams of bias, both conscious and unconscious bias. And the more that people share their story, the more education and awareness we can help spread.
Yeah. So that's a good segue into kind of what you do now, right? But I kind of want to get the connective tissue between coming out of college, having that job, getting laid off. At what point did you start realizing that there was a delta in the military talent out in the workforce? At what point did you see that there needed to be something to fix those deficits?
So when I was working as an executive recruiter, it was really frustrating that I couldn't just tell people in general, veterans or otherwise, what they could do differently so that they wouldn't continue to be rejected for the jobs that they were going after, or if they performed poorly in an interview and it cost them the opportunity. I wished so badly that I could say, do this next time, or answer this question like this, because it allows you to really play on your strengths and it's not as confusing to understand, right? But you can't say that when you work for a big company or any company, because all you can say is, we're considering other candidates, or we'll consider you again in the future. Some kind of bullshit canned response that's, legal for all the HR reasons.
Right.
So I volunteered as a mentor. And I fell in love with it. It wasn't attached to the company. It was my private, my volunteer effort. And I could say anything. I could use all the knowledge that I had from HR and talent acquisition, and I could help drive people to their goals for their career. And it was like lighting me up inside like the 4th of July. Like every call was so good, and I couldn't get enough of giving this to people. Right. And it's like, oh, that's so gracious of you to give your time, and you're such a great volunteer. But truthfully, this gave me so much joy, so much satisfaction. It was the missing link to happiness for me professionally and personally. I took so much joy in it. And so in these conversations, I realized like, gosh, there's such a link between mentorship and recruiting. And I wish that when I left the military, I had something like this. I wish that I knew this existed or had even thought to get a mentor. And I really fell in love with it.
Who'd you go through to the mentoring opportunity?
My very first was with VeteranLife and the Travis Manion Foundation through their Character Does Matter program, is how I got involved with TMF, but then also VeteranLife, which is like virtual on-demand mentorship in your pocket. It's pretty fantastic. In tandem, at my corporate job, I was tasked with creating this huge veteran initiative company-wide. It was amazing. I was so lit up. I was so excited. And long story short, it got killed at the last second.
Oh, no.
Because, even though I poured my heart and soul into this, I held focus groups and created a budget that was mainly sweat equity. And it just got killed. It got pulled overnight. Like it just didn't freaking matter. And it was devastating. And that actually happened again at my next job. And the company was owned outside of the US, and they just didn't care enough to really put through the effort. So knowing how I felt about mentorship, knowing the gap that existed in military talent and that talent marketplace around veterans and military spouses, it just really pissed me off to the point of feeling so unsettled and knowing in my gut that I could do more about it than what people were doing then. And I was scared.
Yeah.
I was not this like badass bee, fresh off the boat, ready to just jump into entrepreneurship. I never thought I could do it. I'm like, I don't know anything about business. Who would want to work with me? And I mean, I'm great at what I do, and I definitely care the most, but I don't have a ton of money, and I don't even have an MBA. And I was in the right place at the right time, and I took the opportunity, and I got my first client, and I just jumped off the cliff. Even though everybody was like, don't do it. Go get another job and just do it slow. Just like walk through it and take your time. I'm like, nope, I'm just doing it.
So you're saying you were, was this in between being laid off and your next opportunity? This is when you decided.
No. So I did take another corporate opportunity after that, after I had gotten out of that, unemployment depression,
right.
Being dark and feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. I did take another corporate role. And I was head of commercial talent for an aerospace company in North America. And so it was great, except for, sorry to put anybody on blast, but like I could have slept through my job 7.5 of the 8 hours and still crushed it. It was like just going through the motions. It was like ridiculous. And if all I cared about was a paycheck, I could have just kicked my feet up all day and collected it every 2 weeks. But it was killing me inside, because all I was doing with my time, my free time, was investing my energy in transitioning military veterans and their families, and lighting them up about their own potential and recognizing what they could make happen. And here I was just squandering opportunity of my potential because I was using like maybe 20% of it. And I was like, this is bullshit. Like, this is not what I'm talking about. And I'm not living it when I'm talking about to other people. And I'm not living it because I'm afraid to go and grab it by the balls and take it for myself because I didn't think I was good enough.
Right.
And
it's scary.
It was scary. It's scary when you're used to getting a salaried paycheck and then all of a sudden you're going to go carve out your own and earn every dollar for yourself. And if it was not for my mentor, who was a badass Army veteran, if it weren't for him, I probably would never have taken that. I don't know if never, but I wouldn't have taken it right then. And if I didn't have his wings to borrow, I don't know that I could have taken that flight.
That's so interesting. And something that you just said struck me as super important is backing up. You were a mentor. And I think it's important to note that you had a mentor as well.
Absolutely. Right? Mentorship is a two-way street for sure.
Yeah. So I know that there's a lot of organizations out there who still provide mentorship or mentorship connection for military veterans, transition military. So encourage everybody to obviously look into that. If you haven't done it, you're missing out. I had a mentor from J&J as I was transitioning, and yeah, it was definitely beneficial. So you're kind of 1 foot in corporate, 1 foot in entrepreneurship, or how'd that happen? Or did you just jump right into the entrepreneurship and say, see you later, corporate?
Even just thinking about it's kind of making me sweat a little bit. I'm not going to lie, because I was so afraid. And I had gotten invited to speak at this event in New York City. And the event had put out this poster. I didn't even have a headshot. I literally cropped my face from a family Christmas photo for them to use, which is so embarrassing when I look back. But also, time out. My mentor taught me that if you don't look back a year ago and cringe on about what you did, then you're not growing enough.
Oh.
So I've grown so much because I cringe every day. But, it was just nonstop growth. I'm like Natalie and the Beanstalk. But I got to this event. I was like, oh my gosh, my company is good. My boss is going to see this on LinkedIn. Like they're going to know it says Natalie Oliverio, military talent partners with my face. And they liked it. They even shared it. They didn't get what it was. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So through this event and the people there, I got introduced to a company that was looking to hire veterans. And it was the first opportunity that I ever had to pitch someone about my business and about the importance of hiring veterans. And I just went with it. I didn't have a pitch created. I hadn't practiced. I just went with it with all heart and all guts. And they hired me. They gave me 10 jobs to fill. Just me, party of one, MTP. Wow. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God.
10 people.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I have to quit my job. This is a conflict of interest. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm doing this. And It was unlike being unemployed. You know, my husband was so supportive and he's like, you'll be fine. You're amazing. You'll get another job. I'm like, yeah, you're right. He said, we'll be fine no matter what. This time he was like, are you sure you want to quit this job? Are you sure that you want to go and make your own? Are you sure? I'm like, listen, I got 3 months worth of cash flow. I can do this for 3 months and be okay. If I can't get this off the ground in 3 months, I will just go get another job, which sounds really cool now, but I have chills and I'm sweating while I'm telling you this because I lived it and it was terrifying. And thank God, in 3 months, 90 days later, I had 9 more clients. And we were hiring veterans left and right. And I was still mentoring and I was pairing the magic of mentorship with recruiting. And that's exactly what I always wanted to do. I just didn't know that I could. I didn't know that all this time of wasted potential, I was in the wrong place at the right time until I wasn't. And once I felt that spark of right place, right time, I just fucking took it.
Yeah. Now, I think it's important to pause here to explain a little bit about kind of the business model behind what we're talking about. And so we're talking about not just, well, it's recruiting, right? And so somebody coming out of the military, they've either been told, don't go with a recruiter, you don't have to do that. Or they've been told, go find a recruiter. But a lot of people don't understand, you know, okay, well, how much is a recruiter going to charge me? Or is a recruiter going to take a portion of my salary? Or what's in it for them? Right. So if you don't mind, can you kind of just lay bare what the business model of recruiting in this space looks like?
Yeah, it's pretty effed up, to be honest. There's a lot of bad actors out there. My personal belief is that as a candidate, which means a veteran, a transitioning service member, a military spouse, you should not be paying to get a job. I'm also not a proponent of professional resume writers. Unless you're going to lockstep, shoulder to shoulder, write it with them, you're cheating yourself on learning your own story and being able to tell it, which that execution is far more important in getting a job than that piece of paper. But don't get me spun up because I will go all day on it.
Oh, I'm going to get you spun up.
So as far as like bad actors, there are specific firms that just only, you know, go after capturing junior military officers because you've got college educated individuals who also have some military experience, and that makes them like a golden goose.
And willing to work 120 hours a week.
Right, exactly. Like much less than you deserve because they just want to fit your square peg into some round hole to check it off their box and make sure that they can like get more placements, which is tied to the money that they make. And that placement method is pretty standard. However, money out of pocket from a candidate is unethical, in my opinion, unless you want to hire a headhunter, which is different than a recruiter. A headhunter is like an agent, like a sports agent, right? That's hired to represent you that could then go and farm you out to all these companies and introduce you and get this potential. And they're expensive, right? So unless you're some baller, I don't know that you're going to hire a headhunter. But recruiting is different. So there are a lot of big name, top tier, I don't say top tier, but they're very big name, popular named firms and recruiting firms that less and less have the best interest of veterans at heart. And so Military Talent Partners was created as the antithesis to that. And so what we do for candidates, for veterans, transitioning service members, military spouses, it's entirely free. We take zero money, $0 from them ever. In fact, 50% of the revenue we do create through our business connections, like business to business, we dedicate to keeping all of our services free, always. So that's number one. Number two, We partner with companies all across the country to help them hire veterans and spouses. We do that through direct full life cycle recruitment. We also offer strategic consulting services and diversity and inclusion strategy, workforce planning, and talent development. So there's a lot of things we do to partner with companies that's totally different than what we do on our service side with our candidates, our veterans, our service members, our spouses. So because we believe so heavily in pairing mentorship and recruiting together, it only makes sense that our business has those two sides that go hand in hand. It's a constant fight to change that narrative to someone who's had a bad experience with another recruiting firm. Right. And same on the company side. These companies that work with third-party agencies often get a raw deal, and they just don't want to consider the options for diverse talent because they just want to find the same talent they've always hired that do the same thing they've always done. It's easier. So encouraging companies and having this conversation is not the easiest road, but it's the most important. And in the long term, it's going to pay off time and time again for them. So winning over people in that way, as far as companies to work with, is a challenge, but it's worth it. It's worth the fight every day because we have tens of thousands of veterans and service members and spouses in our immediate network who've done the work, who've been mentored, who understand their why and their purpose and what they want, and their interview prep is done and their resume is perfect and they're just ready. Mm-hmm. But there's not tens of thousands of employers and meaningful opportunities that are ready for these individuals. So it's a constant effort that is not for the weak at heart. Yeah.
Yeah. You said it. The business of recruiting itself, it's a hustle, right? There's time limits. Of course, if somebody wants to hire somebody, they want to hire them soon. Right. They want X number of candidates. And if a candidate or a veteran or a candidate isn't hired, then there goes the revenue for the company. So it's a self-supporting model where, yes, veterans get a job. The business that the recruiter has contracted with pays a fee to the recruiting firm is essentially how it works. Is that right? Normally,
the company does.
Right. Yes.
The standard is that the company will pay a fee, either a retainer up front or a commission on the back end, based on what that new hire, right, is hired in at. And those percentages wildly vary across the board. So it depends what it shouldn't and typically doesn't do from a company perspective is affect how much that candidate makes. Like, let's say the job pays $50K and that recruiter is going to get 20% if they hire somebody at $50K. That doesn't mean that candidate could have gotten $60K. They still would have gotten $50K because that budget typically comes from something else, depending on the company breakdown and dynamic and financial situation. But also that doesn't mean that there's not a wiggle room for that candidate to negotiate on their offer. The offer that candidate will accept and the fee paid to the recruiting and the consultants, two different things. It's not a negative thing. But if it ever gets to, okay, if we get you hired, you're going to have to pay us this, or, you're going to owe us 5%, 10%, 20, 30, whatever.
Those companies are out there, but not with MTP.
Absolutely not. We do not ever charge any candidate for any reason. No veteran, no service member, no mil spouse. Even if you're a civilian candidate, which we don't typically hire, we wouldn't charge them because that's on our model. The companies that pay for our services, those are the companies that are on our for-profit side. We are for-profit, for-purpose company because the purpose side is the mentorship and the services and the career coaching that we offer, and it's always free.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that recruiters and companies like yourself do exist because they are a very integral part of transitioning. Segue into transitioning, right? So I kind of want to take me through a little bit of a process. I'm Bill or Bob or whatever, and I'm a year out from transitioning. When should somebody contact somebody like yourself to line up mentorship? And, you had mentioned to me in a previous conversation that you look at it as a holistic approach to an ideal transition. Explain what that means and the path that one should take.
There's a lot of different opinions out there. There's checklists, there's timelines, but the timeline really depends on you. It's never too early. If you're 5, 10, 20 years out, before you even get in the military, if you want to have an after action plan, that's okay too. As soon as the inclination comes to you, as soon as you have the idea about thinking what's next for you, that's the right time to start having the conversation, because there's so many different conversations and layers of them to have with your spouse, with your family. Where do you want to live? What do you want to do? What should our life be like post-military when we've regained the freedom to make those choices versus the government? Mm-hmm. By the way, this is what I've done for X number of years in the military. What do I want to do next? I have no idea. So maybe let's get a mentor. It's never too early to have a mentorship conversation or a discovery conversation with yourself or someone you trust. So it's never too early. As soon as you have the idea, it's the right time.
That's a good point. I think my mentorship started 18 months out, if I'm correct. But so this holistic approach to transitioning, does this include getting all your ducks in a row? Is it you have to get your resume out there, you have to fix your LinkedIn profile if that's what you want to do, you have to plan how to network, when to network, whom to network with? How important are those things while somebody is transitioning?
So they're not immediately important, because everybody races to get this resume template created or their LinkedIn created and populated, but you don't have a clue of what you're even saying.
Right.
You have to decide who you're going to be next. What's the future Natalie like? What's the future Cliff like? What do you want to do next? Because your resume, your personal brand, your story, the way you interview, the way you talk about yourself and what you want is not about who you've been and what you've already done. It's about what you will do and who you'll become next. That is so much more important. And unfortunately, the adult attention span is 6 seconds. So you have to be so sure, so confident, competent, and clear about who you are, what you want to do, and why you want to do it. Answering those 3 questions, whether it's through mentorship, self-discovery, internet research, doesn't matter, practicing on your iPhone video camera, whatever, it does not matter. But you have to be able to answer those 3 questions. Otherwise, what the hell are you going to write in your resume?
That's right.
How are you going to answer interview questions? Why do you want these jobs?
Hit it with us again. What is it? What are the 3 questions?
You have to know who you are.
Who you are.
What you want to do.
What you want to do.
And why you want to do it. Then when you get into the conversation with someone, you can describe how you'll do it, right? So really it's 4. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? And how? But the first 3 is the fundamental bottom baseline. I mean, the foundation to everything else. I just had a mentorship call before this with you and I, and someone with 17 years, multiple deployments, had lived out their career and ready to retire and just had no clue what was next. And, they're like, well, I can get into contracting and I have a clearance and I can do all these things. And, but I don't really know what I want to do. So that's what most people think, right? Like, what can I do? What's available? I can do anything. I just want a good job, until it's 6, 9, 12 months later and you're miserable and it's sucking your soul and you're making money, but you're unhappy. And so now you're taking that home with you. And now you're thinking about all the things you could be doing. And it's just not even close to the quality of life that you deserve and can have. So by going through this process to understand who you are, what you do or what you want to do, and why, now you've got the foundation. Now you can have that discussion via your resume, pulling out pieces that are relevant from your experience to tell the future story of what you're going to do next. That summary, that the words on your resume, keywords, whatever someone has told you is important to put in there, they're all fine and well. But the way someone feels when they read it decides whether they call you for an interview. They want to know more. Just like on your LinkedIn, the way someone feels when they view your profile decides if they hit connect or send you a message or reach out in some way. So it's all about the story that you tell holistically about you, who, what, why, and how that is making relevant people feel, people that are relevant to you, how they feel about you. Like someone doesn't hire you because your resume is perfection or you interviewed, you're such a slick interviewer. It's what you said and how you made them feel that makes them feel hired. You're hired. You're amazing. Right. So that's the thing you got to learn. Right. And so the importance of your question, when do I need to have this, and this? Not off the jump, because if you haven't done the work, it's going to be such a long, painful process to get where you want to go.
Yeah. And I've seen it with several veterans. I could say I've seen it with myself as well, where when I got out of the military, I didn't really know what I wanted. I didn't know, I didn't even know what type of jobs were out there, to be quite honest. And I did a fair amount to prepare myself, but I ended up having those same questions, like, what am I going to do? If I would go to network events and they'd say, hey, what do you want to do? And I couldn't answer that question when I first got out of the military. And it was kind of scary. And then, life happens along the way. And I was lucky enough to find a really good opportunity where it worked out, but I think I was lucky, to be honest with you. I think I got a little bit lucky through networking, and lucky me, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else. That's for sure. It was a fair amount of stress. So what do you say to somebody who does say, Natalie, I don't even know what's out there. I know where I want to live, but I don't know what the landscape out there looks like for somebody like me.
Yeah. First of all, you have to understand what somebody like you means. What do you want to do? And in comparison with the location that you want to live in or that you are in, a simple Google search or multiple searches will answer those questions for you. So then you can see what the landscape looks like, the career landscape, and then you know what you're after. So then you can start drawing some intersections. Here's what I think I want to do. Here's what I'm qualified and eligible to do. This is where my education fits in, and this is what I've always done or what my experience is like. So you have those multiple circles and you find in the middle where they intersect. That's your focus, right? So now you're more specifically looking for things in those Google searches and that career landscape. And you're going to find multiple job descriptions, different varying titles, but you're going to find things that start to hit for you that tie together a story, a narrative of experience or skill or qualifications. And you realize that's what I'm looking for. That's one way, right? Or you start formulating more intelligent questions to ask a mentor or multiple mentors, so you can get great feedback. Then you start networking and getting in there to figure it all out, because only you can figure it out. People can tell you all day what's right for you, but you're the only one that really knows.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me ask you another question from the other perspective. I found in a previous opportunity that some companies, a lot of companies, aren't very good at writing JDs anyways. And then they're horrible at writing JDs that will translate to somebody exiting the military. They say, I want to hire people who are veterans. I want to hire veterans, but they don't know how to write job descriptions that a veteran might be able to understand. Have you seen that?
Oh, all the time. All the time. There's such a disconnect between desired qualifications and talent that's relevant in veteran or otherwise. So yeah, there's a disconnect, which just all the more creates the emphasis for us to be able to drive that conversation and draw the lines between what qualifies us versus what doesn't, or what's confusing. The less confusing we are, the more convinced they become.
Interesting. Transitioning just a little bit here to 2020. I want to ask a little bit about, obviously you have a business that relies on the world kind of being in a status quo in some sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that had to been tremendously stressful to be in a business like that, where all of a sudden, you're having to deal with that, right? How did you get through it?
Which part?
The part of the pandemic and adjusting your business model.
It was really hard. And, I was coming off of a sudden death of a parent and a pandemic and fighting depression. And it was a perfect storm of just nightmare, really. So it was a hard time for everybody. And it felt like the whole world was mourning with me. It was terrible. But I feel like I got to the point of hearing about how important it is to pivot so much that I wanted to choke the next person that said pivot. But what it did do, the more productive answer for you, is that it forced me to rethink everything. What's the most important? What's the best value I can bring to people right now? Because not everybody's hiring. People are freezing their hiring. People are confused. They don't know how much money they're going to have. They're laying people off. What is the most value? And that really blossomed our strategic consulting arm of the business.
Nice.
And we really leaned into it. And what that did was breed more opportunity for hiring post-pandemic. I don't know that we're really post-pandemic, but as hiring and people return back to work, it better prepared businesses on how to do that and how we were able to support them, and how hiring military talent was really the key to that success. So coming through it, thinking through a different lens, I'll call it, instead of saying we pivoted, you got to pivot. Pivoting it is everything. If you can't pivot, you're going to fail. I swear to God, if I hear pivot one more time, I still might lose it. But essentially, I guess that's what it really was, is that we took a deep look at what was most important, reintroducing the biggest and best value we could add. And we just wanted to bring it in the best way.
You adjusted.
We adjusted.
So Natalie, I know that you have another appointment you have to get to, so we'll wrap this up. So I'm going to quickly just pivot to, sorry, I had to throw it in there. I'm going to just ask you to relay your best advice for veterans who are in transition, post-transition. What's the best advice you can give somebody who's out there, who's looking for work, whether or not they're a veteran, whether or not they're about to be a veteran or became a veteran 10 years ago?
Yeah, no matter where you are in your process, if you've got 5 years left in, if you're thinking about going in and you want to know what's next, or you're underemployed or unemployed, wherever you are in your journey, you are not alone. It is so important to know there are people, there are organizations, good people and good organizations that exist to help you at no cost. And that anything you want to create, you can make it happen. You need the right people in your corner. And by deciding and defining what that really is for yourself, that will help you navigate into the right direction. Reaching out for a mentor is so pivotal. And I'm telling you, we are happy to put you on that path. It doesn't have to be with us directly. We partner with the best mentorship organizations in the world, and we work hand in hand in helping people get set up there as well. So it's not just a one-stop shop. It's our way or the highway. Our way is customizing it to you. And so you realizing that you're number one, your first priority, and that you can create anything, those are power moves. And by taking them and taking full advantage, you can go anywhere and do anything. But just remembering that you're not alone. And if you forget everything that I said, all you have to do is go to militarytalentpartners.com, reach out to us there. You can find me personally on LinkedIn or Instagram at military.talent.partners or on our LinkedIn page. We're there every day talking to people back and forth, scheduling mentorship calls, and just getting out there to get what needs done. And we're always in your corner.
There you have it. Well, thank you to Natalie Oliverio and Military Talent Partners. And thank you for all you're doing for everybody out there. And I really appreciate the conversation.
I do too. Thanks so much for having me. And thanks for having this amazing podcast and such great resources for veterans and their families.
Thank you. All right, folks. So that's a wrap with Natalie Oliverio of Military Talent Partners. I want to thank Natalie for joining us on the podcast. She's obviously a tremendous resource for veterans, for the spouses of veterans, for transitioning service members, also for corporations, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, anybody who wants to put together a veteran-centric team or look into their veteran hiring strategy. Go ahead and reach out to her. She's just a great human being, a great person, and somebody who I genuinely enjoyed talking to. Also, if you get a chance, go ahead and click that subscribe button for this podcast. You can do so on just about any podcast service out there. We're listed. And make sure you join us next time. In the meantime, if you want to go to our Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, please do so. The ats will be in the show notes. And when you get a chance, also go to VeteranLife.com. That's www.veteranlife.com. VeteranLife.com. All right. Till next time, take it easy.